Hello and welcome to this final panel of the Canadian Electric School Bus Alliance's conference, Electrifying Canada's School Bus Fleet, Challenges, Lessons Learned, and Solutions. My name is Donald Jantz, National Partnership Manager at Green Economy Canada and Executive Director of Sustainable Campus Collaborative. I am your host for today's panel discussion on operating electric school buses from coast to coast. I greet you from the traditional territories of the Niitsitapi, Blackfoot, and the people of the Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta, which includes the Siksika, Piikani, Kainai, Tsuut'ina, and the Erie Nakota, the land where the Bow River meets the Elbow River. The traditional Blackfoot name of the place is Mokitsaansis, which we now call the city of Calgary, which is also home to the Métis Nation. Today's event includes a short introduction of the Canadian Electric School Bus Alliance, that the session is being recorded and that the recording will be made available after the event. The Canadian School Bus Alliance, CESBA for short, is a Canadian-wide coalition of organizations from environmental NGOs and health associations to fleet operators and EV advocacy groups, all advocating for policies that accelerate school bus electrification. We aim to see all school bus fleets be electrified by 2040 or sooner. To achieve this, we organize events such as this conference to facilitate networking and acknowledge sharing among stakeholders, and we work on developing strategies and recommendations to accelerate the uptake of electric school buses at the federal and provincial levels of government. More specifically, in the provinces of PEI, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Quebec, Ontario, and British Columbia. We welcome you to engage with CESBA to help us bring more ASBs to our communities and students. For this event, we'll be discussing the operations of electric school buses, covering some of the technical and logistical challenges and strategies to overcome them. We are joined today by speakers from British Columbia and Quebec, who are on the ground leaders in their provinces in transitioning to their fleets to electric school buses. Before joining the Association of School Transportation Services of BC, Frank Marasco served as the Director of Operations for the Board of Education of School District 83, North Okanagan Shuswap in British Columbia. He was the first in Canada to receive designation as a Certified Director of People Transportation through the National Association for People Transportation. Prior to his 20-plus year career in the school transportation industry, Frank was a business owner and has worked both as a consultant and been seconded to work for the British Columbia Ministry of Education, where he was instrumental in developing the British Columbia School Bus Purchasing Program. Philippe holds a business degree from the University of Quebec in Montreal. Previously, he held the role of Business Development Manager in Canada, New England, and Cuba in the HVAC and industrial engineering fields. In 2017, he joined Auto Chambly, a third-generation family business, as Chief Operating Officer. As part of his duties, he's responsible for ensuring the fluidity and profitability of the day-to-day business operations and for maximizing the limited opportunities available in terms of government subsidies and thus minimizing the impact of the transition to ESBs from diesel on the company. Thank you, panelists, for joining us today. So we'll start off with a bit of an overview of the key characteristics of your school bus fleet, such as how many buses and how many electric school buses are in your fleet, how many personnel and bus drivers, how many students are you busing, and how long are your typical routes, and are they urban or rural? Philippe, could you start us off, and then we'll transition to Frank? Thanks.
Hi, good afternoon and good morning to some of you. We have 46 buses on our side. 5 of them are already electric. 2 are on their way in the month of August. We have 55 employees, and roughly 6,000 students are being transported every day as far as we're concerned. Our routes are anywhere between 80 to 112 kilometers for half a day. And we do over 1.5 million kilometers every year. And that's it. That sums up really good what we're doing right now.
Excellent. Thanks, Frank. How about you?
Yeah, good morning and good afternoon and good evening from where I am to everybody. So my situation is a little different than Philippe. I am managing the Association of School Transportation Services of British Columbia. So we're like a industry association that serves as a center of excellence for student transportation in the province of BC. The student transportation is no longer part of the School Act in British Columbia, so our organization acts as a liaison with government to ensure we have pieces that are in place to create standardization across the province and assist districts across the province with training and purchasing and whatnot. So the British Columbia fleet, I'll give you a provincial fleet because that's what we deal with, is 1,750 buses that are operating in the public K-12 sector. And of those, 1,250 are run by the greater public sector, being school district owned and operated, and the rest are operated by contractors. And then there's about another 1,000 that are operated by private and Indigenous schools throughout the province. So to date, we have about 75 electric buses that are on the road in British Columbia. So we started our program roughly 4 years ago, and we have a number of buses on order as well that are coming. So we will see that number increase dramatically over the next few years. We transport in the province. We transport about 135,000 students. And of course, the number of buses is definitely the number of employees are greater than that. And we have a provincial training program that we've developed and trained all the drivers across Canada, and exclusively developed a training program for electric school buses for driving.
Excellent. Thanks very much. Great overview and real diversity there. Moving on to question 2, and we'll start with you, Frank, this time. How long has your organization been operating school bus fleets and ESBs? You've already covered that to some degree, but how long have you been operating school bus fleets personally? Kind of have you been involved in that aspect of it? And from your perspective, and maybe this is the focus, how have school bus operations changed over the years, particularly with the integration of electric school buses? And we start with you, Frank, and then move to you, Phil.
Sure. As I said, I don't operate. Our organization doesn't operate directly, but we support school districts that are operating across the province, and private operators as well. So that being said, our first electric school buses showed up 4 years ago. They've been in operation, 18 in the first year, and then subsequently more. But like I say, there's 75 on the road right now. They have been, we've been, our organization was part of the school bus industry and supporting the industry since 1965. So it's been many years. Have things changed? Absolutely. Safety's been the biggest factor in change and technology, and that continues to change. I know in my role, I also chair the CSA D250 committee, which is the construction of school buses in Canada, and the technology that's evolving and coming into play with student transportation. And the EV part is just one piece of that, but it will continue to grow and enhance student safety and student outcomes across the country.
Excellent, thank you. Philippe, how does that look from your perspective?
Well, like Fran said, on our side, we are operators, or we've been living it on a day-to-day basis. So our company has done it since it started three generations ago in 1956. So it was so we're the third generation right now. So we've been doing it for a while, actually. As far as ESBs are concerned, we've been doing it since 2018, since it was a corporate choice. It was it was kind of a green choice on our side. But since 2021, right now it's mandatory. So we just have to do it every year on a repeat level. And actually what changed, from 1956 to 2021, roughly nothing. But in 2021, dramatically, it changed the whole picture, the big picture, the way that we're doing business, the way that we operate our business, logistics and everything. I know we'll talk a bit later on. But the huge change actually was in 2021. I'm sure Frank can relate to this, but for the past 20 years, if you take a school bus and you sit in it, it was roughly the same in 2003 than in 2023. There's not that much technology involved with, but right now it's total different challenge, and greatly appreciated. That's it.
Thanks. Excellent. Yeah, I can see that it's being transformed. This new technology is changing our approach to busing so significantly. So moving on to a little more general question, and I'll start with you, Philippe. What targets, policies, and programs currently exist in Quebec, and how are they impacting your fleet operations? What's your perspective on that, and how are you adapting your business to meet that challenge?
Well, contrary to the other provinces, our policy, our business model now is mandatory. So we're not allowed to buy diesel or propane or natural gas school buses anymore, even from other provinces or other states in US. So we're actually allowed to buy them, but we're not allowed to operate them for our regular school bus routes, which are our bread and butter as far as we're concerned. So it is mandatory. The target in Quebec is the ESB conversion is being done through a program which is called Plan pour une économie verte, which is Green Economy Plan in English. And the numbers are by 2030, we need to have 60% of our fleet fully electric, and by 2035, 100% electric. So it's a bit more aggressive than the Canadian target, which is 2040, if I remember correctly. Again, this is mandatory. So what the Quebec government put on the table to help the school bus operators is to put some subsidies, which are unfortunately regressive, but they were there starting in 2021. And the subsidies are done through the Ministry of Transportation, which allows the school bus operator to have a fixed amount, a fixed subsidy on their purchase of any acquisition of new electric school bus. So in 2021, the first year when it came up, it was $150,000 per bus. A year after, it went down to $125,000. And as I'm speaking right now, it's down to $100,000. And this subsidy is ending on March 31st, 2024. There are talks that it's going to be renewed, but as for right now, this is the end of the subsidy that we have to deal with. The good thing, though, that started in 2021 is the Ministry of Transportation allowed the school bus operators to have a 75%. They did cover 75% of the cost of the electrical infrastructures, the chargers, anywhere that we need to get the current from Hydro-Québec all the way to the electrical infrastructure, all the way to the bus. So it's a huge investment for school bus operators. And this again has a fixed date, so it has an end date, which is by the end of 2024, because they thought that everyone in, as far as school bus operators in Quebec, would have jumped in 2021, which didn't happen that fast because of that. So that's what we're dealing right now. We have a small incentive from this the school boards as well. That was $15,000 per contract that was used with electric school bus. That was a year ago. Right now it's down to $8,000. And the logistic with the regressive incentive or subsidies was that the school bus per se would be less expensive in the years to come because of the progress in the technology. But obviously, every raw materials has increased in terms of pricing and everything. So if you buy a veggie, if you buy an apple, if you buy everything, it's more money. So it's the same as far as school bus are concerned. So that's right now the parameters that we need to deal with in Quebec.
Thanks for that overview, and really appreciate that challenge that you're going through in terms of the costs. I can understand how that can really affect you significantly. Frank, from your perspective in BC, what are the targets, policies, and programs, and are they affecting fleet operators?
Yeah, there's a lot of targets. So the greater public sector, the provincial government, so any school district owned and operated vehicle would fall in under this. So all fleets in the province are to be 40% zero emission by 2030. Now, that doesn't mean that every single fleet, but the entire fleet across the province needs to be 40%. So is what the goal is, and the mandate of government. So one fleet might be 80% by that date, and another fleet might only be 20%. So that's the target from government. However, that target seems to be changing and moving and being enhanced. We have Clean BC that operates through the Ministry of Energy, Mines, and Low Carbon Innovation, and I believe they were on a panel discussion earlier in the conference. So they have programs that exist for facility assessments, EV fleet readiness. They have programs for funding charging infrastructure. We have a program that we have been running for the last 3 years that was funded through them, that we administered. That program will come to an end here shortly because we are exhausting the millions of dollars that we were given to distribute through that for this program. So there's 75% coverage for the charging infrastructure between the federal program that we've now gotten access to through the ZETF that we've done. Our organization has come together and we've done collaborative and cooperative applications in every aspect. So also all school divisions that are purchasing buses receive capital funding from the Ministry of Education. So that's a core base funding that would be equivalent to the cost of a diesel bus. If they choose to buy an electric bus, then there's money available from Energy and Mines. And now we have a number of districts that have been approved to also have enhanced funding from ZETF that we've worked with, and including infrastructure as well. So that there will be more announcements coming on that in the future with the federal government. So those are the programs that exist and that are in place. We're also supported by the BC Climate Action Secretariat, who is part of what's going on, and the First Nations community is playing a large role in starting to convert their fleets for their Indigenous schools across the province of BC. So it's been huge impact with what's happened so far. There's definitely been some growing pains and changes that have been occurring, but it's definitely a good thing that is developing and coming to fruition in British Columbia.
Well, Frank, maybe we can continue with the next question.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for Donald. I don't know if he'll be there.
Yeah.
So on your side, what are the key ESB actors in your province that could help your school bus operators? Anyone from associations or private companies? What do you have on your side?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're probably the key actor involved in working, putting everything together, because of the organization that we are with the province, and we do all the liaison with the government and the private operators in the province of BC. They're part of our organization as well. So we provide them supports and we also have funding streams available to the private operators as well, although they also have things that they try to do on their own. Depends on how large they are and where their connections are corporately. So and you know, so that's, and I've already mentioned the government pieces that are involved. We also collaborate with other nonprofit organizations and associations throughout the province that are part of this. Our school trustees are involved. Our PAC groups are involved. The For Our Kids organization has been really helpful in going after parents and boards of education to help them move towards this from an education standpoint opposed to the operational piece, and we're very thankful for them in that work. And now we've been involved with CESBA right from the beginning as an organization supporting this across Canada. So can other fleet operators or other provinces replicate this? I believe they can, but it takes a very big concerted effort of numerous people being able to come together and set aside some differences and work together in a collaborative approach. And we've had many other provinces come to us and ask how we did this, what we did, and we give them information, but to date nobody has replicated. And so even before electrification, we've been running this model in BC of doing these things with the purchases of buses since 2010 in the province of British Columbia. So
good, thanks. Well, as far as
over to you, Phil.
Oh, sorry, Frank. Did you have anything else to add?
No.
Okay. As far as Quebec is concerned, obviously we have a provincial federation, which helps us on a certain level, but mostly we've been relying on mostly the school bus manufacturers who had to start their own energy division, and to get the facts and to get the history and how it will work, it was actually through them. So Lion Energy was born since it was one of the first to manufacture electric school bus in North America. So they had a huge advantage to start with, when in 2021 it was down to making a big decision. Now you have, as far as Quebec is concerned, we have Girardin Energy, which is a distributor of Bluebird electric school buses. But other than that, we have another a company which is called BOM Quebec, which will be like chargers for Quebec, independent company as well, who helps you getting the right subsidies and having the big picture in mind, so you can invest at the right place and the right time as well, which is a key thing. The timing is a key thing in Quebec in terms of subsidies. And on another side, we have access to a company called Clio, which is a division of Hydro-Québec. And Clio is kind of a turnkey program, a leasing program offered to school bus operators. So exactly, you just need to fill up a few boxes, and they will let you know what you need. They will operate it. They will take care of the charging services, the management programs. Obviously, it's a leasing program, so you don't own anything. So if your private company is moving or expanding or whatever your plans are, the equipment and electrical infrastructures are not yours. So as far as we were concerned, as a private operator, it was a downside because we had access to the 75% subsidy from the Ministry of Transportation for the electrical infrastructures. So just by doing the maths really rapidly, your return on investment is way better if you're doing it yourself, but you need key partners. And on our side, Federation helped a bit, but the school bus manufacturers did help way much better to get our hands on everything that was involved in terms of subsidies and government programs.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, I agree with that, Philip.
And to answer the last questions, how it can relate or replicate to other provinces, well, on our side, it just can't, because it's all provincial. We don't have access to any federal programs because the provincial one has jurisdiction because it was announced before the federal one. So that's another story, but right now it cannot be replicated elsewhere because the parameters are kind of obsolete if you compare them to the federal programs and subsidies. So that's what we have to do.
Thanks. And that, that's unfortunate. It'd be nice to see some stacking opportunities come up so that the Quebec program could be integrated, and there should be opportunities that way, but at this point, maybe not. Frank, from your perspective, how do those aspects look for the situation?
Donald, sorry, when we moved on to the slide, and I'd already pretty well answered this.
Okay,
I just wanted to reiterate one thing that Philippe said, is that with the manufacturers, I know Lion has been very instrumental in Quebec, and of course that's where they're based, and same with Gerard, but in BC we don't have any manufacturers, and BC's got a little different climate situation that varies very much, and all the manufacturers used to always say about power, how much power that the BC school districts want in their buses, because there's a few mountains that we have to climb all the time. So, but it was really interesting when we were first getting going in this. One of the manufacturers, it was International, came into BC, and they brought engineers in and did a whole bunch of questions and studying with school divisions across the province, understanding what their needs were, what their climates were, because it's so varied throughout the province, and without having any consideration that they were going to actually be the ones selling a bus, but they did that in faith in trying to build and make sure they put the best bus to market, and it was really, and they ended up getting the first group of buses in the tender. So that was quite good. And so I can relate to Philippe's comment about how Lion supported them, because International did that with us initially in British Columbia indirectly. But it's been great working with a company that supports the industry.
Excellent. Sounds great. So question number 5, I assume we haven't gotten quite to that, although we touched on it a bit. What are the key challenges and barriers you've encountered with ESB operations, logistics, and maintenance? How does that look from BC? I mean, like you say, you've got mountains to go up in some cases. Electrical infrastructure and charging infrastructure can be a big issue when that comes into play. Performance of vehicles. How does that look?
Yeah, I think when I don't want to talk too much about the automotive industry, but after we first started running electric buses in the province, I fully understood why Tesla had a proprietary charging system in place, because it took away a lot of the issues that were involved in incorrect connections and whatnot with their vehicles and chargers. it's similarly, we're seeing things like this happen in BC, where school division thinks they got a hot deal with this charging company and this software provider to manage that, and yet there's no way for the manufacturer of the bus to do any diagnosing because they have no access to that software and what's going on. And so we're slowly trying to figure out a way to move to a solidified system, and we are in the process of actually doing another tender right now that's going to bring that a little closer to us right across the province and standardize things, and we hope that that's going to help. But that's where the biggest piece of downtime has been, is in that situation. The other things regarding logistics, maintenance has been minimal. I know the manufacturers that do have buses operating in BC have got some ability. They do have capability to do over-the-air diagnostics. Navistar has service trucks that are on the road in multiple locations across the province that can actually go to a site and deal with an issue, which has been great at times. But how wide the province is, those trucks can't be everywhere. And then we've also had issues where due to certain climates that range issues become get impacted, and so depending on the heating that's needed, that type of infrastructure that changes. But and driver training plays a big role in that, and that's why we developed we tried to work in developing that driver training program. We try to make sure that every bus that's delivered, we're part of the training, so we can help train the drivers of the best possible solution to drive that bus to get the most effective and create a success story instead of someone complaining about something.
Excellent. Yeah, you can hear from your response just the range could go into any one of those issues in detail. Yeah. So I appreciate that. It is interesting. The capacity to generate data with electric buses is so huge. But if you can't access it, if it isn't consistent across all the different bus systems, kind of limits that capacity as well. So yeah, I look forward to hearing more about how you can update that infrastructure. Philippe, what's your perspective on the challenges and barriers you've encountered for your operations?
Well, I'll start with the barrier, so it will go way more positive afterwards. The barrier on our side is our subsidy allows us to buy a bus that is it's only accessible if the bus has been manufactured or assembled in Canada. So it limited us to Lion school buses, which are great school buses, but there's no competitive market. So there's not that much challenges between school bus companies in Quebec as long as the parameters that we're doing right now are as is. So this is our barrier, because we have logistics and feedback from one school bus company and one school bus company only, which we know we could have way much more information or feedback from the other manufacturers who've been doing it in other provinces and states for a while. Big manufacturers like Freightliner with Thomas, which is owned by Mercedes. So they have a lot of school buses in the market. But with that being said, our challenges, though, are not much more different than what Frank has to deal with in BC. Is we have to deal with startup companies. It's startup companies for the electrician who's doing electrical infrastructure. It's the first one that he's doing for a school bus fleet. It's a startup company for school bus manufacturers because it's a new division. All energy divisions are brand new. The Bluebird in Quebec started in 2021, late 2021. Thomas, they don't have one yet. And Lion started obviously before because they've been manufacturing it since 2017. But every time you have a problem or any questions at all, they're all startups. So they're learning with you on the road. So it helps each other, but it's as an operator, we have in our challenges an estimate amount of 20% downtime per electric school bus within a year. So 1 day out of 5, so every week there's 1 day which the school bus cannot be on the road for a certain issue. The ratio for diesel buses in anywhere between 5 to 7%, even brand new. There's a bunch of sensors and a bunch of maintenance that needs to be done. So it's not that much of a big deal, but at the end of the year, you need to take this into account. And when you put this into a perspective on when you will be able to get your investment, your return on investment, it just pushes it 20% further every time you're repeating this on a yearly basis. So this is one of our biggest challenge. It's all good on paper, but once you're living it as an operator, and we've been doing it since 2018, so we know what's going to happen if X and Y situation happens. So that's one of our big issue. Obviously, we have the same as in BC as far as weather is concerned. We have pretty cold and pretty hot, weather over here. And when it's pretty cold weather, you have to take into account that it wasn't calculated in your investment, that you would need to put around anywhere between 80 to 100 liters of diesel in a school bus every 2 weeks. So it's roughly anywhere between 800 and 1,000 liters that you need to put every year in an electric school bus. You're not talking about this when you're buying it and operating. You're just living it once the cold hits you. So another thing to take into account. What else? Power surges. As you have in BC and anywhere in Canada, just the recent and the live wildfires that we have. So we're having a lot of power surges because the electrical distributors such as Hydro-Québec are doing some intentional power surge to just making sure that the current has been distributed in big locations. So long story short, as far as a school bus operator we are concerned, it's affecting our day-to-day business, because one day we come in and there's 3 out of 5 buses that are not fully charged. So right now it's not a huge problem because it represents 10% of our fleet. But next year it's going to be 16%. So every year it's going to be a different scenario. Because the opposite of Frank in BC on our side is every school bus operator needs to achieve the 65% electric school bus transition by 2030 and 100% by 2035. So it's not a regroupment or combination of, a few key players are doing it, and so they will be able to absorb the whole market. It's everyone has to do it and to attend it. So it's kind of a big challenge on our logistics, and that's it. So and the subsidies as well. It's one of the challenges that we need to address at one point, but that's it.
Excellent. Thanks, Philippe. Can really hear the challenges are significant with that proportion of downtime. I'm really hoping we'll see that decrease as they become more familiar, and maybe the technology progresses. But I can imagine how challenging that would be. I'll go back to you then, Philippe, going into question 6. What are your key lessons learned that you wish somebody had told you before incorporating these ESBs, and advice you could give to those who are earlier on in their journey?
Yeah, on our side, since everyone kind of was starting up this ESB conversion, I was lucky enough to have a unique reference as far as how to do it. What I mean by that is, if you start to pick and choose your parties for this transition, meaning that you're choosing your own electrician, your own engineers, and afterwards you're picking up a bus, but you're not taking into account their energy departments, or you're going into a third source to do it, meaning that at the end, once you have your full installation, who's going to be responsible if something fails? They're going to throw the ball at each other, and no one will want to deal with this. So we were lucky enough on our side to make a proper decision to go with one energy department with Lion that had already experiences with a key electrician engineering company based out of North Shore of Montreal. And the chargers that we put in were sold also by line. So it was kind of a no-brainer at the end, because my first question was, okay, what's going to happen if my ABB charger is failing, my Blink charger is failing, if this, and that. So I have only one phone call to make, and they talk within each other, and they're a great team. So if I have one lesson, is don't pick and choose your parties or your contractors. Make sure that they all talk to each other, and they all rely on each other.
Excellent. Yeah, I can imagine just the value of having a little more integrated support to make things.
Your turn, Frank.
Looks like we lost him. Sure. He's trying to come back. There he is. So, yeah, you know, I'll reiterate a little bit about what Philippe said is, and I fully agree that a big lesson learned is that the manufacturers of the buses have a recommended charger and software that they integrate with their manufacturing company. I personally, based on what I've seen in the industry of electrification of vehicles as a whole, not just school buses, I don't believe the manufacturers have got it all figured out yet either. So I think there's more changes coming to that. I think there's got to be more standardization and that's where we're moving as a provincial model, is into being able to create a standardization and reporting. We've been doing a lot of work in the background with some reporting and at our upcoming conference, our provincial conference coming up in July. We're going to go through a lot of that. We also have programs with BC government that we can actually do collectively. We can consolidate and broker carbon credits for all the school divisions. So that's the other piece that we're going to be able to do with the data we're collecting, and then redistribute the money back to the school divisions that they're using from their carbon, their charging. So that's another bonus that's coming. But because not everybody has the ability to collect the data that's needed, they won't all get access to that additional money. And when you collectively have province-wide the number of carbon credits we're able to accumulate, we got big blocks of carbon that we're going to be able to sell off every year and redistribute the money back. Hopefully the districts will put it back into investing in more buses, because that's that little bit of delta that's still there. If the money was there to cover it, then that would help. So also lesson learned was initially the types of chargers that were being recommended for a certain size of bus were not appropriate chargers, and all the manufacturers have now come back with recommendations to say, no, you need to go with this level of charger because that's not really adequate. And I still don't know if we've really completed that situation yet, because we still can't effectively deal. I know with the range issue of doing field trips and things like that. If you have an 80 kilometer morning and an 80 kilometer afternoon bus run, you're really limited. That's all the bus could do if you're not getting a significant charge in the middle of the day with a proper charger. So that's the other piece that's going to get addressed, because we still have kids education programs that take them on trip, whether it's an extracurricular thing, going to sporting events, or the skating rink, or the swimming pool, or it's going out to study wildlife in the rural area outside of the community, right, where the bus is off-site for a while. So those are the other issues that are going to have to be addressed with infrastructure. So and I think that's coming, but that is a thing that we need to deal with in the short term to figure out how we can best get by that. And so I look forward to hearing the lessons that Quebec learns by 2035 if they're going to achieve 100%, because there's a lot of things that need to happen.
such great points. The challenges around the grid infrastructure are so key. It's great to have an electric school bus, but the ranges are changing, the capacity for charging has changed. So there's going to be some really interesting issues you're going to have to address, and look forward to those coming more clear. Particularly, having a level 2 charger is fine, like you say, but you need to have placement of level 3s and at the right level of level 3s. There's such a range of those to meet the different demands. Moving on to question 7, what government-led measures, whether technical, logistical, financial, could make your job as the electric school bus fleet operator easier and accelerate adoption? Start with you, Philippe.
Yep. I have to talk about Quebec because I do operate in Quebec and we are limited right now. So just to start with, government could help us a lot if we could have access to a proper subsidy program through the Ministry of Transportation. Right now, we have to deal with a regressive subsidy, which right now gives us only $100,000 rebate out of a $326,000 school bus, which is the cheapest one that you can get on the market. So it is still $226,000, which is $100,000 more than a diesel. So we need to cover that as a private company, and it's net money. So it's not a feasible or attainable way of doing business. So it needs to be way much more aggressive, at least to start at the starting points that they had in 2021. Logistic was kind of a bit sketchy. Logistic behind the regressive subsidy was that the school bus, electric school bus, would be less expensive year after year because of the technology. It didn't happen. And also inflation, it never goes down. So I don't know where they came up with it, but it needs to be at that level. And the other point is we're the only province in Canada that don't have access to the federal programs, which are, I think it's $1.5 billion in terms of electrification of the moving for the green economy. And we have access to 150 million, province-wise, which is okay, but it's limited and has an end date. So the federal one is way much more aggressive. It's a percentage out of the bus. So if the bus increases in terms of pricing, well, you still cut the pair in half. So everyone gets to. So on our side, it's a fixed amount. So it just doesn't make sense. And I did ask the questions why we're not allowed to have access to federal programs, and nobody has an answer. So our federation, our Ministry of Transportation, Ministry of Education. So what we would like is, I guess, more communication between themselves, and at least to give us the same chance as the other provinces has. Because on our side, it's not a question of if we want to do it, is we have to do it. So since October 31st, 2021, we cannot register an electric school bus other than we cannot register a diesel electric school bus or any type of thermal other than an electric school bus to run the school routes. It's just, you just can't do it. So that's it on our side.
From BC perspective, in our programming, to deal with this, in discussion with our school divisions across the province and our operators, funding, more funding would make it a better situation. We have lots of good programs in place. Most of our programs are set in a percentage, although there's a maximum on the percentage up to it's this percentage or a maximum of this amount. So we've been dealing with that, and we also have we have a program set up province-wide to take advantage of the Canada Infrastructure Bank low interest loan, which I believe is set up in Quebec as well, for operators. But for some reason, people are shy to take advantage of a 1% loan that's guaranteed. And I don't know why, but that is a piece that people are not. And then the next obstacle is more funding for infrastructure and setting up that infrastructure, as you said, Donald, earlier, it's beyond. We still need more that's beyond what's in our yards where the buses are stored. And then we have a lot of, and I'm sure in Quebec as well, in BC, we have a number of rural districts that have drivers park at home. So when we go to 100% electric, how do we deal with that driver having to have a level 3 charger in their driveway? It becomes, and the expense, whose expense is that of putting that in? And then if the driver changes a year later, then what? So those are all challenges that we need to get through and come up with the financial ability to deal with those things. So, but definitely money is number one, and we need to get the funding increased to. I know we would have virtually 100% of our orders in BC would be electric if it was 100% covered in funding.
Yeah, fascinating. Thanks very much. Yeah, the whole infrastructure is such a challenging one, particularly if we do have operators, like you said, who are taking their bus home, and that's very common. And we'll have to figure out some solutions to that I don't think are really evident right now. In our final question, what are the next steps for your bus fleet? Philippe, can we go to you for that?
Next step for us is already written in the books. It's electric school bus. It's around 10% of our fleet being renewed to electric school buses. So the next challenge will be managing those charging stations remotely. So the bigger your fleet is in terms of electric school buses, right now we're doing it physically, but at one point we would need to be able to do it remotely, which is very expensive as we speak. So hopefully we'll work with the key parties in that situation in order to make it happen.
Excellent, thanks. We're running down from time, so we're going to hop over to our questions from the audience. Thanks very much for going through all those questions and having such thoughtful answers. Really appreciate that. One of our first questions is ranked high. Sina to Philippe, what's the driving range of your 5 electric school buses, and how much do they currently travel daily on a per service block in the morning and afternoon? Thanks.
Yeah. Our range right now that we have is we have 5 Lion C buses, which have an autonomy of 150 kilometers. So I always push it to the limit as far as I'm concerned when I'm doing my routes. So we're attributing them to routes that are anywhere in between 90 to 112 kilometers roughly, because you have to take into the account the winter time. So it's a bit more aggressive in terms of energy consumption. So the goal also is for your drivers, school bus drivers, to come back at the garage with at least 15 to 20%. If you're lower than 15%, and you have to deal with unexpected traffic or construction or anything like that, you'll make the driver very, very, very nervous, as ourselves as well, because as you know, electric school bus, they cannot be towed. They need to be put on a platform in order to be towed. So it's 3 times the amount. So you don't want this to happen. So basically, our electric school buses are doing around between 30 to 32,000 kilometers a year, which is pretty aggressive for the autonomy that they have. Obviously, we wish that we would have more autonomy, but autonomy comes with a pricing, and since we have a fixed amount in terms of subsidy, it's just not feasible right now.
Thanks very much. Thanks for that answer and for that question. Another question is, again, I think it's related to Quebec, from Nicholas. I'm working for Indigenous communities in Quebec. What would you consider an optimal distance between a rural community and the school for a pilot project for electric school bus?
Not sure if I'm understanding the question correctly. So what would be the ideal distance in kilometers for a school bus route? Is that it? Is that a question?
That's right.
Rural? Yeah. Well, what kills the autonomy of a bus is highways. So when you're anywhere under 70 kilometers an hour, and if you're very urban, obviously the more autonomy you will get. If you're rural, but you're still under 70 kilometers an hour, it's still pretty good. But the best efficiency you will get it on the urban side. Rural, obviously, it will take more energy. So if I was doing only rural on our side, let's say with 150 kilometers autonomy, I would not go further than 95, maybe 100 top, just to make sure. But then again, I don't know the, I don't know if it's the right word in English, the topography, the, how can I say, the scenery of, so it's pretty flat as far as we're concerned, but once you go outside, you know, the greater Montreal and city of Quebec, we have a lot of mountains, so not as much as BC, but we still have some elevations to deal with and that you need to take into account. But roughly these are the numbers that I'm thinking.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, topography is exactly right. It changes a lot what you can do. And our next question is kind of along those lines. I think I'll direct it to you, Frank. SAQ had some bad experiences with electric truck from Lion. What are your experiences? And are today's electric buses up to the task? And I think that the final sentence here is quite critical. Let's say the bus is fully loaded and going uphill. And I can imagine that's encountered very frequently in BC with the mountainous terrain. Are there some parameters, or are there some ways that you've learned to approach that or start to think about it to determine what routes are going to work and whether, you know, you actually find that your buses can meet that challenge, you know, even, you know, putting on top of that, maybe very cold weather, which can happen in most parts of Canada.
Sure. So you know, we currently have 4 different manufacturers' buses operating in BC. And there's one more or 2 more that may end up within the next year operating as well. So it'd be nice to see them all operating so we get a good determination. But one thing that's, you know, in the diesel world, let's say, or fossil fuel world of buses, everything's pretty well the same. I mean, they all run the same transmission. If they're running diesel, they're all running the same engine. So it doesn't matter who makes the bus, and they're all, you know, got similar drivetrains in them and everything. So you can, you know, in the situation we're talking about, you're you know, and usually in a school bus, they're underpowered. So if you're climbing a hill fully loaded, the driver's typical habit is to put the gas pedal to the floor and just let it climb as good as it can climb. However, in an electric vehicle, there's no advantage to doing that because it's wasting energy, because the accelerator is distributing energy and it can't, and it's pushing energy that's not going anywhere. And so we've had this situation happen in one vehicle where the bus was limited and the driver was trying to get it to go faster. And he was climbing a hill and he was wasting energy in the battery. I talked to the director and I said, have the driver, you know, put his foot down, then just back it off like you know, 2 centimeters or, you know, or just a little bit. And it changed. It didn't, he was still going the same speed, but he actually gained about 20% range. And it was a long climbing hill. We've also had districts where the hill climbing and coming back with the regenerative system on a particular bus was able to actually generate more power into the battery coming down the hill than what he used to climb the hill. So it's very interesting what the topography plays a huge role, and also on the manufacturer of the bus as to whether or not they have the regenerative system that will allow that absorption of that power back into the battery fully.
Excellent. I mean, it's fascinating to hear how you can adapt to the performance characteristics to really meet your user needs. And I'm sure we'll learn more and more things about that. We're over time a little bit now. There's just a couple questions. If you guys are all right to answer those, I think we'll be able to wrap up, but it'd be nice to be able to respond to the questions that have come in. But yeah, if you have to drop off, please do so. So a question from Andrew. Are school boards and school districts also taking a more proactive approach to ensure that operators operate routes that are closer to their depots? So are you prioritizing, routes that are just going to be easier for electric school buses to adapt to because they maybe require a little less range and less risk, and therefore cutting down on unproductive mileage with ESBs for operators, as you learn how to manage that? Philippe, what's your perspective on that?
Well, it's good feedback, but as far as we're concerned as an operator, you don't want small routes for them because you need to compare them to a diesel vehicle, and the only way that you can calculate the return on investment is for them to be on the road. When they're just doing small runs here and there, I would put a diesel on these routes because it will last longer. The return on investment is done through kilometers. So that's why we're maximizing it to make sure that we, make the most out of it, actually. And the more you're using it, the cleaner you are. So it's kind of a win-win. So you're not buying, it's kind of the Cadillac of buses. It's one of the nicest ones to drive. You're not just letting, and it's not a show. It's not a show off. So you need to use it. And that's it. That's my input on this.
Nice, excellent. Frank, do you have a perspective on that as well? Is there a similar approach or something different?
Well, I've seen both scenarios happen in BC with the buses that have been implemented. And some of it's the depot operator or manager is a little gun shy at first, so puts it on something safe. But then we've also seen someone who puts it on the longest run they absolutely have to save the most fuel. So, but it was straight highway, deadhead miles and it didn't give us a good perspective. So it's but anywhere in between those two things, and very, very much hilly runs will generate. Long runs are great. They'll give us the most, lots of stops and starts, gives us the most range and work in giving a return on investment.
Excellent, of course. Well, that makes so much sense, and I'm looking forward to kind of comprehensive studies of this. Another question that's gotten a vote from Trevor is, the major hurdle I'm currently encountering is that I will require major electrical site upgrades from BC Hydro for the EV charger infrastructure. The school board will not commit to EV until we have a quote for those electrical upgrades, but Hydro has no estimated time of arrival for a proper site assessment. How can you help with this? So in BC, it's one hydro provider. In other jurisdictions, it might vary, but we all encounter this. How quick are our utilities in helping us adapt? Do you have a perspective on that, Frank, with BC Hydro?
Yeah, there's a couple programs that are available that BC Hydro has available for school districts, and I think just going to the right channel opposed to just directly to BC Hydro. There's some people that we have access to that are directly intertwined with our programs, and then of course, and there's also funding available to that infrastructure upgrade as well, and we can also include that in our subsequent applications for additional funding through provincial and federal sources as well. So there's ways to do that, and if Trevor wants to get in touch with me, I'd be more than happy to connect him to our sources and try and work that a little quicker for him. Yeah.
Excellent. Appreciate that, and appreciate the role that the association's taking in making this work for everyone. That's excellent. Philippe, how's Quebec Hydro been, and do you have any advice about how to get around? Is there an association or?
Yeah, the advice is just don't be last minute, like because it's mandatory, everyone needs to do it. So in 2021, for us, it took 5 months. We were told 6 months lead time, and it took 5 months and a few days. So it was really like what we've been told. Right now, it's anywhere between 6 to 9 months when you're making the call. And when you're making the call, you need to have your project all aligned, meaning that it's not, you're just not asking questions. It needs to have been thought through, and you need your master electrician. You need engineering, electric engineering drawings approved as well. And after that, you can send this to Hydro-Québec. So as soon as you have all your documents prepared and all your school bus that you bought and everything is all done, then it's anywhere between 6 to 9 months lead time for this part.
It's pretty significant, but I understand that as well. But it is, I mean, you get a bus, you need to charge it. That infrastructure takes some time to put in. You need to think very carefully. And I think it will change. You'll realize maybe, oh, actually, we need this configuration of chargers once it's in even, but at least having some of that infrastructure in place is critical to being able to use it effectively.
If I can add something to this, Donald, when you have one electric school bus, it doesn't change that much. It's like having an EV car at your house, you know, it's just a dedicated breaker for it. But when you get down to 4 or 5 buses, this is where the challenge is coming. So when you're coming in the morning after the school bus routes, you have 100 kilowatts that is starting right now just to be ready for the afternoon. And then again, you're repeating the process in the afternoon. So it's a different thing. So imagine next year, it will be 200 kilowatts an hour. It's a lot of energy. So it's a lot of money. So you need to think this through. And this is the biggest deal that needs to be dealt before. Where you would put the electrical infrastructure is a main issue. You know, you need to make sure that it's at the proper location, because everything will start from that point. That location will be key to where you're going to start your charger routes and stuff like that.
Makes sense. A couple new questions have come in. I will take the time to ask them again. These will be our last questions. I think I'll have to let everybody go, but hopefully they'll be quick. Mike asks, I know it's early to consider this, but what will happen to electric school buses when they age out? Is there a plan for the safe disposal of the electric batteries? This is a growing question. Is this something that's been started to be considered by the operators of these buses? I think there's around the batteries, there's also just the timeline. I mean, technology is changing somewhat, and that may affect the ability of these vehicles to age. Do you need to add battery capacity to it, or different issues?
Well, every EV battery right now, even in an electric car, is lithium-ion batteries. So basically, it's a big box of thousands of AA batteries. It's literally that. It's just that much complicated. So the recycled thing is kind of a international issue. It's not just for the EV vehicles, but for every lithium-ion batteries elsewhere. Technologies are evolving, but the new batteries, like the solid-state batteries, will be the future. Will be smaller batteries, no heat distributed, easier to manage when they're not working, so no danger. They're not flammable. I don't know if it's a word, but sorry. And long story short, the recycling of batteries is an issue that everyone's involved. Even if your lawnmower, everything that has a battery is a lithium-ion battery. So we haven't been told, as far as electric school bus manufacturers, we haven't been told how they're going to manage or recycle the batteries after the end of the life of the bus.
So I'd like to address that as well, if I can, Donald. I know there's a couple plans in BC. One is so some of the manufacturers that we deal with have got a full circle life on the battery, and we anticipate that before the end of the life of the vehicle, we will be replacing the batteries. So one of the things we've looked at, because of most of our buses are actually in school division. In the school division role, so they're actually part of government and part of the whole school division. So There's a lot of talk about creating power bank to help with emergency power systems, because that battery's still usable, even when it's may not be usable for there's still enough storage in that battery to have some good for those situations. So that's one aspect that's been looked at, as well as the manufacturer having a full circle turnaround on that. And technology is changing. I know a fellow who's working on EV aircraft, and they're moving into lithium sulfur instead of lithium ion, and they're getting twice the density and half the weight for the power range of the battery.
Absolutely, the technology is changing dramatically, trying to reduce some of those critical minerals often, and that density, if they increase it, and there are batteries that are doing it. Sometimes they can be more expensive, but there's potential. And cold weather plays a role too. There are different chemistries in colder weather. So the final question Andrew asked, and I'm not sure he's following up on a question we already answered about having vehicles operate closer, electric vehicles operate closer to their depots. So he says, I understand. I was asking regarding routes that are over 250 kilometers long, and I don't know how common that is, including unproductive mileage in the day. And how are they providing service to those longer routes? Are there ways of breaking up routes sometimes that some operators would be better placed to deal with particular routes? You know, have you been approaching this route issue and distance and capacity of the buses to cover those distances in creative ways? Philippe, have you got some ideas about that? Or?
Right now, there's you just can't do it right now. If you have to deal with 250 kilometers run, the maximum autonomy that you can get on the market is the Lion C 250 kilometer autonomy.
No, yeah. That's not true, Phil. We have a bus running in British Columbia that's got a 350 kilometer range.
Oh, from Lion?
Nope, from Navistar International.
Navistar is different. Yeah, they don't make school buses.
They have. I mean, they don't. You know, it's not common. Yeah.
But as far as school bus manufacturers are concerned, and only school buses, not urban or charters and stuff like that, the maximum that you can get on the market is 250 kilometers. As far as Quebec is concerned.
As far as Quebec, but I see Navistar school buses, they have an option of a 350 kilometer range.
Yeah.
Pretty significant. And then it would be able to, take on those routes. And I can imagine the cost grows quite a bit whenever you get that size of battery.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's the main cost of these vehicles is in their batteries. So, but with that, I think that thanks very much for your patience covering all our questions. In terms of signing off now, I think we can conclude. Thank you very much to our wonderful panelists today for sharing their work. So interesting to have that discussion. There's so much opportunity to go deeper into all these questions, but it's great to get this overview. So to conclude today's session, we encourage you to stay in touch with CESBA by visiting our online resources at eschoolbusalliance.ca, join our bi-monthly newsletter, and follow the coordinating organizations online, Equiterre and Green Communities Canada and social media. We'll be sending out a post-appreciation survey along with the recording. So we really appreciate your feedback to help us improve future sessions. And if you've not already seen it, we also encourage you to read the newly released Pathways for Canadian Electric School Bus Adoption Report, prepared by Dunsky Energy and Climate on behalf of CESBA. This event concludes our online conference, Electrifying Canada's School Bus Fleet, Challenges, Lessons Learned, and Solutions. We thank everyone who joined us today and for the sessions throughout. Have a wonderful day, everyone, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.